Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Anil Gupta from University of Jammu. Today we are going to talk on the module Structural Implementation of Strategies from the paper Strategic Management. At the end of this module, you shall be able to understand the concept of structure and strategy, learn about the link between strategy and structure. You'll also learn about the various organizational structures and understand various structures for implementing different strategies. Students, structure refers to how the workers within a particular business are organized and how they relate to each other. Structure defines how activities such as task allocation, coordination, and supervision are directed towards the achievement of organizational aims. An organizational structure specifies three key components that are given below. Number one, it identifies the relationship between the number of steps in the hierarchy and the span of control of managers. Number two, it specifies the grouping of individuals into different departments and of the departments in the total organization. Number three, it consists of plans of activities in order to ensure effective communication, harmonization, and integration of goals and objectives across departments. The first two components constitute the structural framework, which is the vertical structure created through the process of differentiation that involves division of labor and specialization. Whereas the third component refers to the pattern of interactions among various constituents of the organization and is the horizontal structure created through the process of integration that involves cross-functional information systems and the teamwork. So what is the relationship between strategy and structure? Students, we all know that a strategy is basically a route plan which is aimed at staying in good shape with clients and vendors, or it is all about reaching specific aims and objectives. However, the manner in which different sections of organization fit together is what we call as an organizational structure. For organization to achieve its goal, both the strategy and structure must complement each other seamlessly. This is very important to ensure that the objectives are realized. In fact, there is a research which has been done by one of the leading thinkers, Chandler. And way back in 1962, he gave a very interesting statement. He said that structure follows strategy, which basically implies that every organizational structure is developed based on the strategy of the organization. The research done by Chandler indicated that the matching of structure to the various requirements of the strategy is important. However, there are another set of researchers who support the idea that both strategy and structure have a two-way reciprocal relationship. Just look at this figure, students. Here it says that strategy determines the structure, whereas according to the new researchers, we can say that structure also affects the strategy. So there is always this bi-directional relationship between strategy and structure. Therefore, we can say that structure is very important because a good structure in place can help firms to realize the strategy that it intends to operate. So wherever there is a need, if the strategy is to grow and if there is a need to change the structure, firms should take appropriate steps to change the structure so that the strategy gets realized. So students, why is it important to have a proper structure in place? Why is it important to have a structure implementation in place? We're using a simple flow chart to explain this. On the extreme left hand corner, you see, once the strategic plan gets implemented, which basically means that there are new strategies which are put into place. And once the implementation of these new strategies take place, there is a possibility that the mismatch occurs, which means there is a mismatch between new strategies and the existing structure which is in place. And whenever this mismatch occurs, there is a possibility that the performance of the organization declines. resulting in reduced effectiveness. And then there is a call which says that if you really want to improve the performance, this new structure has to be put into place. And if the timely a new structure is put into place, this can possibly result in better performance. So therefore, having a proper structure in place is critical to ensure that the strategy gets implemented and the vision and mission gets realized.
General Grand Strategies. Porter in the year 1980 gave the generic strategies of product differentiation, cost leadership, and focus. He showed that firms which are looking to control the market should opt one of the three. Firms which applied a combination, according to him, were stuck in the middle and lost efficiency and effectiveness, thus lost competitive advantage. Several grand strategies have been postulated and show a multiplicity of ready-to-use strategies to gain competitive advantage. Exhibit 1.4 below shows combinations based on market growth and competitive positions. In this image, students, you can see four quadrants of grand strategy matrix.
Students, there are different type of structures that are generally found in the organization. Some major type of pure structures with special emphasis on their appropriateness for different strategies, or we can find functional structures in the organization. There are divisional structures. Some of the large organizations divide their business in terms of strategic business units. New form of structures which exist are matrix structure and the virtual structure. Now let us talk of the first type of structure, that is the functional structure. Students, this is the most commonly used structure among organizations. This is a centralized type structure because this structure is the simplest and least expensive of all other structures. An example of typical structure is shown in the subsequent slide. Beside being simple and inexpensive, a functional structure also promotes specialization of labor. It encourages efficient use of managerial and technical talent and provide time for the top management to focus on strategic decisions. But there are some disadvantages also of this structure. Like that, it forces accountability to the top. It always creates line and staff conflict. There is poor delegation of authority and inadequate planning for the products and markets. Functional structures are found in firms with a single or narrow product focus. Such as firms require well-defined skills and area of specialization to acquire competitive advantage in providing products and services. For example, a leading telecom company like Airtel has a functional structure. The transformed organizational structure have two separate customer business units with main focus on B2C and B2B segments. This company B2C business unit caters to the retail customers, homes and small offices by combining previous business units, which is mobile, telemedia, digital TV, etc. On the other hand, the B2C organization consists of consumer business and market operations. Today, this company is one of the leading telecommunication company of India. So just look at an example of a functional structure. You see how the organization is structured. There is a headquarter on the top with the top manager, which is further divided into different departments. So the organizational structure is based on the different functional areas. There is a separate department for operations, there is a department for marketing, there is an independent department for research and development, and there is a department for sales. This is just an illustration, so there can be different departments. Say for example, there can be a department of HR within the organization. The second kind of structure which is very common in organization is the divisional structure. The divisional structure can be organized in one of the four ways. You can divide the organization based on the geographic area. You can have a structure which is based on the product or the service. Some of the organizations use the divisional structure based on the customers, or it can also be on the basis of the processes. This kind of structure has certain advantages. And one of the major advantages that this kind of structure offers is that the accountability is very clear. There is also enough evidence which says that such structures generate quick response to the environmental changes that are affecting the business of different divisions. However, there are few disadvantages as well. For example, there can be inconsistency which arises from the sharing of authority between corporate and different division levels. Also, in this type of structure, at times there are problems in terms of allocation of resources. So, the allotment of funds and the company's expenditure cannot be clearly defined in terms of the division. So, such overlaps at times create confusion or can also result into the conflict between different kind of people. Students, look at this example of a divisional structure. You see there are different levels of this structure. At the top, for example, is the president or the chief executive officer, and then the organization is divided on the basis of three different products it offers. So there is an independent division for product X, there is an independent division for product Y, and there is an independent division for product Z. And under each of these divisions, for example, there are different departments. So there is a department for R&D, manufacturing, marketing, and finance. Students, you can see that such kind of structure can offer both benefits as well as disadvantages. The benefit obviously lies that each division has its own team working in different functional areas. So their effort can be maximized in the interest of the division. However, if you observe, there is one disadvantage which is very evident, that there is duplication of functions. So the organization is allocating more resources for similar function. So divisional structure can offer such advantages and disadvantages.
For example, Tata Steel, the organization structure of the Tata Steel can be divided into three levels, each level having distinct roles and responsibilities. These three levels are namely upper management, senior management, and the middle management. Each of the lower levels accountable to perform its duties and responsibilities and thereby report to the next higher level in the organization on a regular basis. Overall, we can say that the company has a flat structure beginning from the top management to lowest level of management. Also, we can take an example of Ford Motor Company's organization structure, which is built on business requirements in changing market conditions around the world. Ford Motor Company's organizational structure is divided according to geographical markets. Ford's organization structure has the benefit of ensuring global direction and control. Also, the functional group maintain hierarchy through functional support, such as HR management to maintain Ford's personnel. In contrast, the large regional geographic division have the advantage of effortlessly applying incorporated plans and policies throughout Ford's organizational structure. The main advantage of this type of organization structure is that the accountability is clear. Also, it generates quick response to environmental changes affecting the business of different divisions. But with these advantages, there are few disadvantages also, like in this structure, inconsistency arises from the sharing of authority between the corporate and divisional levels. And also in this type of structure, there are problems in the allotment of funds and company's expenditure.
Another form of structure which organizations can create is the strategic business unit. You see that in this case an additional layer of management is required, and the objective of introducing this additional layer of management is to improve the strategy implementation. When the organizations grow large in terms of the size and the diversity, to gain a proper control on these diverse units, such additional layer of management proves useful. And when a top management looks into the diverse kind of business, it also results in higher synergy. So the adoption of this type of structure is a result of firms encountering difficulty in assessing and managing the operations of their departments. As the diversity, size and the number of these units increase, there is an advantage of this structure is that it results in better coordination among different businesses. However, there are certain disadvantages of an SBU structure as well, that it requires an additional layer of management which ultimately increases the overall expenditure of the corporate. Often, at times, the role of the chief executive officers become ambiguous. Another main advantage of this structure is that it facilitates strategic management and control of especially of large organizations. So each business is treated as a strategic business unit which has to generate its own profits, and each independent unit has to work in a profitable manner so that the overall corporate gains in the long run. After discussing the SBU, now let us discuss about the matrix structure. The matrix structure allows effective knowledge management since separate areas of skills and resources will be integrated across organizational boundaries. This structure provides dual channel of authority, performance responsibility, evaluation and control. Subordinates are assigned both to a basic functional area and a project or a product manager. Thus, the matrix structure simplifies and amplifies the focus of resources on a narrow but strategically important project or a product or a market. There are many advantages. One of the advantages of this structure that it offers and facilitates use of specialized personnel, equipments and facilities. Also, it offers a clear project objectives and workers can see visible results of their work. But of course, there are few limitations also of this structure, such as that it requires a high level of vertical and horizontal combination which can lead to communication problems. So students, just have a look at the example of a matrix structure. You see how beautifully this structure can be utilized to optimally utilize the resources in position. So this is a project based structure where there is a general manager on the top, and then there are different departments. Say for example, in this picture you can see there is a production department, there is an R&D department, there is a marketing department and so on. And there are different roles for each project. So say for example, project 2 requires the services of marketing. So the marketing department would allocate few people to this specific project. Similarly, if project 3 requires more people in the production department will ensure that the project 3 gets adequate resources in terms of the people for the production department. So this kind of structure generally offers benefit in the interest of the organization, as this is perceived to optimally utilizes the resources that are in the possession of the organization. Students, we all know that today we are living in a global world, where organizations today are not operating only in one single country or one single location, but they are operating from multiple locations. And thanks to technology, it has become much more easier for people sitting across the world to connect with each other. And therefore, with the emergence of technology and as the result of globalization, virtual structures have emerged. So a virtual organizational structure connects different departments through the internet. There can be a situation where the different departments are located in different geographical locations, but they are networked and they operate as though they are in the same building. So it doesn't matter whether the marketing person is sitting in China or the technical person is sitting in Brazil. This brings a lot of advantages because departments can be located where it is the most appropriate. Firms can organize the division of departments based on the expertise and the availability of resources at a particular location. Just look at this example of a virtual structure. How the organization has divided based on, say for example, an application view. There are groups, there are applications, there are people. And these people are divided across three different divisions, Division A, Division B, or there are external users. So virtual structure is a new reality of today's present world, where organizations can divide the department and establish them into different locations where the maximum benefit gets accrued to the organization. So there are different structures that can be adopted by the firm depending upon what kind of business strategy the firm is adopting. Students, as we know that the business strategies are of three types: cost leadership, differentiation, or focus strategies. Each of these strategies create a different set of requirements, and therefore it requires a different organizational design with a different structural arrangement. See, for example, if the firm is focusing on attaining cost leadership, so the structure on the left of the slide becomes more useful. Whereas if the firm is focusing on differentiation, where the job of R&D and marketing becomes very important. So the firm could have a different structure where the person from R&D and the marketing are directly reporting to the CEO, and they become the important functions that help the firm to achieve differentiation. Similarly, for different corporate strategies, the firm could have different structures. We all have discussed so far that the corporate strategies of integration, diversification, internationalization, cooperation, digitalization, or retrenchment generate different requirements, which are to be satisfied by different organizational designs and structures. For example, if we talk of the integration strategies, where the integration, vertical and horizontal integration, that the company can use to consolidate their position among competitors. Horizontal integration generates commitment to the adjacent business, whereas under the vertical integration, the organization extends itself backward to the raw material or forward to the customers. So these strategies would create requirement for the structure which are to be extended accordingly. For diversification strategy, it has generally been observed that a multi-divisional or a SBU structure is more suitable. So depending upon whether the diversification is related or unrelated, the structure would also reflect the differences. Related diversification would create the requirement of retaining linkages among functions and departments within the organization so that there is synergy in terms of creating economies of scope. Whenever there is an issue related to unrelated diversification, it is implemented through a multi-divisional structure. And linkages in favor of divisional autonomy could be ignored to pursue different line of business. Look at this figure, which can possibly give you solutions for international strategies. So if a firm is pursuing a global strategy, a most appropriate structure would be a product-based structure. On the other hand, for a transnational organization, a metric structure becomes more suitable. If the firm is following an international strategy, a division structure makes more sense, whereas if the firm is following a multi-domestic strategy, a geographic structure will ultimately help the firm to realize its objective better. Similarly, if the firm is following a digitalization strategy, so the structure for digitalization strategy may not be different from those used for implementing other type of corporate strategy. However, the difference arises in the way the digitalization impact the organizational design. For example, digitalization may impact the process design in an organization, which may require a change in the structure of the organization. Whenever a firm, for example, is following a retrenchment strategy, in fact, it generally does not involve significant organizational design and structural changes. The only effect it could have is that it may result in hiving of departments or division that are retrenched, resulting in the curtailed structure. The structures generally tend to become much more smaller whenever retrenchment strategy takes place. So students, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. Structure is an approach in which different activities of management are required to implement a strategy are arranged. In a setting, these strategies, a firm is required to change its structure so that it can better implement these strategies. As discussed, Chandler said the structure follows strategy. The development of organizational structure is primarily based on the firm's strategy. We also discussed that there are different strategies that can be used to implement different organizational structures. These organizational structures have their own pros and cons. Further, there are different structures that are used at different strategic level and for implementing various business and corporate strategies. So we discussed that there is a bi-directional relationship between structure and strategies.